So we had this idea about having free Zooms for family members, realizing what an unusual time this is for all of you. And I have to tell you that many of our families, many of our autism leaders across the state, and also some folks who are BCBAs have stepped up and shown their willingness. So this is the first one for this summer series. There's a full schedule of them. And if you have questions about it, please let us know. But I'm really thrilled to introduce the first speaker. I've known Kathy Klingerman for several years. She is a board certified behavior analyst. She is an autism consultant for the greater Lafayette area special services and is an incredible professional. So she will be speaking on social skills for the summer. Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy, for that introduction. I'm thrilled to be speaking with you today. I believe that parents are most important members of any team, whether it be a school team, medical team. You and your child and your time are very valuable. And so giving me an hour or giving us 30 minutes to an hour today, I can't tell you how grateful I am for that. We're going to be talking about social skills and staying social in the summer. A little bit about me. Kathy gave you some good information, and I just want to let you know I've been a classroom teacher, I've been an ABA therapist, and I've done lots of things in between. And one of the most meaningful experiences I had was when I did home behavior therapy or home ABA, and got to learn a lot about what it might be like to have a child with autism. And so I hope you find this information pertinent and useful. The last thing I want to do is waste your time. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be talking about social skills. So summer is an important time to stay social, right? It's a social season, but you're free of the structure and the social opportunities that come from school. And so some of that responsibility or time falls on your shoulders as parents. And I'd like to be able to give you some tips. You probably have more tips than what I have. And so when we do our Q&A, if you've got things that are working well for you, please share those with the group. You are our experts, so I definitely want to hear from you. There are some social skills that I tend to teach more than I teach some others. And I've listed them here, and they're not in any particular priority. They're a priority in terms of what does your child need to learn to have a successful social interaction. So some of them are geared towards younger children or children who are learning some expressive language skills. But one of the first things we think about when we think about social skills is the ability to imitate others. So if you are at the playground and your child wants to join in and everybody is climbing up the monkey bars, you want your child to be able to see what everybody else is doing, to look, kind of get an idea of what's going on and be able to copy or imitate. A lot of our beginning play skills are grounded in imitation. Sharing your attention. So one of the first things I teach, I work with children preschool all the way through 21, but one of the first things, excuse me, I teach is pointing and following points. And when children point or adults point, they are communicating, hey, this is important to me. I want to share my attention with you. And so teaching children to point as a way to communicate, or when someone is talking to them and they see a point, that they need to follow that. That's a skill that I spend a lot of time working on with children. Greeting others, particularly in today's climate where we're staying further away from each other, a wave. I do a lot of teaching of younger children just to wave and smile, and that's a wonderful way to greet friends, acquaintances, even just family members as they're walking in the door. So greeting through a wave is a really important social skill. We talk a lot, and you hear a lot about taking turns. You have to be able to spend time with something and give it to somebody else to spend time with. If you don't have that initial turn-taking skill, your social interaction, especially if you're playing with toys, stops pretty quickly. Trading information. So this is something about, this is really the reason we have conversations. We have conversations for lots of reasons, right? Sometimes because of out of obligation or you know, to get information. But for the reason we teach our children to have conversation is so that they can trade information with each other, so that they can find some common interests. And why do we need common interests? We need to know, what can we do together? I don't know what you like. You don't know what I like, but if we can trade that information, then we can find a time, an activity, a setting that works for us. So trading information is really important. And then last, and sometimes we forget about this, but I see it on the playground at recess. I see it in the cafeteria. We need to teach our children how to join a group physically, and then how to join the conversation of that group. And if it's not going well, or if it's time to be done, or there's a different transition, how do you leave that? So we spend lots of time practicing that. So those are some, there's lots and lots and lots of social skills, but these are the list that I have a tendency to teach the most because they are pivotal in terms of helping children increase their social interaction. Okay, so the best thing or the best news about social skills is that they can be taught, just like any other skill. We can teach them. And there are lots of ways, there's lots of lesson plans, there's lots of ways in schools, there's lots of ways parents teach their children social skills. So if you have a way that works for you, please keep that way. But this is a way that I frame or think about how I'm going to teach a skill. Generally speaking, I think about a plan. I think about teaching that specific skill. I think about practicing that skill. And then I think about actually doing the social skill in the natural environment, in the real place where that child needs to be social. We could practice it all day long in a social skills group with me, but if that child doesn't know how to do that on the playground or at church or at a family get-together, I'm not helping that child at all. And that child needs to practice, but they also need to do it in the real environment. All right, so let's spend some time thinking about your plan. As parents, you have plans for everything. I know you guys are organized and have all kinds of ways that you're supporting your child in different situations, different settings. So this is just a kind of a piggyback on what you're already doing. Your plan needs to be specific to help your child in a specific situation. Here are some things that I like to do when I create plans, and I think that they'll be helpful for you. So what does your child need to be able to do to hang out? So if you're talking about a high school student and you want your high school child, to be able to go into a coffee shop and sit and study with a classmate, what exactly does your child need to do to be successful at that? Very importantly, how will your child communicate in this activity? Sometimes it's easy to forget the communication device or whatever you're using to help your child communicate in that setting. But using those devices, if your child is using a device, is very important to take to that setting and that activity. And if your child is having some other troubles with expressing themselves, how is he or she going to communicate during that activity? Very important next question is, what does your child need to be able to tolerate in that setting? So let's go back to the high school example of going to a coffee shop and studying. Will there be loud noises? Will it be dark? Will it be bright? Will there be a strong coffee odor? So think about your child. You are the expert on your child, and you know what your child's triggers are. And so think about them in that context. What does my child need to be able to tolerate for this activity to go well? And right after you think about those triggers, then think about, what supports do I need? So do I need headphones? Do I need an iPad because my child has to wait for his friend to arrive at the coffee shop, and it might be a 10-minute wait, and we're working on waiting, and the iPad is a tool he uses while he waits. So think about all those supports. And think about things that are portable, right? I mean, you probably got a lot of bags and purses and, backpacks that you're taking and all of those things. So I would never suggest bring something that doesn't work to an environment. But think about, those small things that could really help your child feel more supported and be successful, and give them the ability to tolerate the environment. Along that same idea of tolerating, two notions here. If it's not going well, your child is showing you some signs that he's frustrated, or he's told you, I'm frustrated, or I don't want to do this anymore. How can your child take a break and return to the environment? So if it's a park and it's hot and your child doesn't tolerate being overheated very well, and social interactions for 5 minutes are where he's at for tolerating, can you set up a system where your child communicates to you in some way, I need a break, and you go and you sit in your air-conditioned car for 10 minutes and cool down and then return to the situation? Sometimes we can have a child socially interact for much longer periods of time if we build in appropriate and natural breaks. When I'm doing social interactions out in the community or in a variety of settings, the first thing I do, and I'm sure you all do it as parents, is you scan the environment. Where can my child go if he needs some time away? So I just encourage you to do that very deliberately and think about that. The other piece of that is, if your child needs to leave, how can you gracefully leave that situation before it turns into maybe a meltdown or an episode that you might not want to experience out in the community. So think about ways that your child can say, it's time to go, and I can't do another minute. Sometimes as parents and as teachers, we say, oh, 1 more minute, it's going so well, let's do 1 more minute. And sometimes that's just kind of the worst approach. When I've done that with my own parents or as a teacher or consultant, it's that additional minute now that we're kind of in meltdown mode. So after you've answered those questions for yourself, I want you to think about, where is your child at now and where do you want her to be? And then you're going to, as you know, you're going to take those small incremental successful steps to bridge. And if your child, if your plan is for, let's give an example of a movie theater. Let's say a middle school girl who wants to go to the movie theater with a group of girls from her class. And right now, she can tolerate going in. She's got the skills to order something from the concession stand. She can tolerate the very loud trailers, which I have trouble tolerating. And then she can sit through 20 minutes of the movie. Now, after 20 minutes, she's up out of her seat, she's asking to leave, maybe she's leaving without permission. So think about where she is right there and then build small successes. So maybe your plan would be all of those things. After 20 minutes, you're going to ask her, do you need a break or can you keep going? And you're going to, if she's able to keep going, then you're going to do 5 minutes more. And then you're going to say, okay, that was wonderful, we're done. Even though the movie might not be finished, right? So think about those small incremental successes. And I am kind of the belief that when you have positive experiences in the world, you're more likely to have more positive experiences in the world. So if you go to a movie theater and your goal was 20 minutes, but you ended up staying for an hour and a half and it went terribly the last 10 minutes. The next time you say, hey, let's try the movie theater again with some friends, your daughter might say, no way. No way, that was really hard, or it was really uncomfortable. I'm not sure I can do that. I don't want to do that. So think about how to keep it successful. This is normally when I would say, what questions do you have? But we'll address those at the end. All right. So once you have your plan, now you know, what do I need to teach? I'm probably going to need to teach how to ask for a break. I'm probably going to need to teach some communication, some greeting, some kinds of things. We have wonderful resources, and I'm going to show you some new resources as a result of COVID. But we have some wonderful resources. And the first one is listed here at the top, and it's Affirm, and the website is there. Affirm does a really nice job of giving us information about strategies that science say work with children with autism. So we call those evidence-based practices. And those are the things, the tools in schools and at home that we know are most likely going to help your child learn. So some of those evidence-based practices that relate to social skills I've listed here. Social stories or social narratives. We are pretty familiar with those in the world of autism. Socially, they do a nice job of letting the child know what's expected. How is this going to go? What are the rules of this? And they also do a really nice job of saying, I want to do this. I want to yell at the kid to give me the swing, but instead I will wait my turn. So it gives you what we call a replacement behavior as part of that social story. I have put the website for IRCA there. Obviously you all are familiar with that or you wouldn't be on this Zoom today. They have so many wonderful visual supports and social stories. You can go and Google anything, and if they have it, which they most likely will, it will pop up. Another really nice tool for visual supports is STAR, Strategies for Teaching Based on Autism Research. And STAR is a curriculum that I use in schools to teach skills to children with autism. But they also have wonderful home supports and wonderful visual supports. And I'm going to show you some of those in a minute. But if you are wanting to teach a child how to play a game, there's a visual for that. So some of these social skills can be broken down into very small steps, and then we put a visual to it on a how-to guide, and that's very helpful for our children with autism. Social skills training is another strategy we know works for teaching social skills, and there is a wonderful resource. Peers is a licensed social skills training program that you can become certified in, and we have a parent piece to that. But without that piece, their website has wonderful video models on how to do very specific social skills, and I'll show you some more of those in a minute. Social skills training is basically you teach something. You teach a child how to enter a conversation, how to look around and see what's going on, and how to either stay in the conversation or exit the conversation. Naturalistic language strategies is another strategy that you can use. There's a website here to learn more about this, but basically it's what you do as parents. You are using strategies that are very appropriate for that environment, and you are facilitating conversations and giving natural language to what's going on in that environment. But this strategy has a lot of information, but I've included the web address there. And then video modeling. We all do videos all the time now, right? We're in that world where everything has a video that we've taken on our iPhone. And I love that because we can use those models and show our child exactly what needs to be done to walk into the doctor's office and say hi and answer a few questions, which, by the way, is a social skill, right? Being able to do that. iMovie is just one resource, and I put a link there, but iMovie is something I have on my phone, and what I love about it is I can edit it. So if I want to show a child, how to play a game and we have some mistakes along the way, I can edit those out so that when we play the game the next time, I can show him, hey, look, this is how you played sorry. This is how you set it up. And I've taken out some of the mistakes that might have happened so he can see a good, clean model of what he did the last time. All right, so I'm going to give you some really specific examples of our website and how you would teach some of these things. So this is IRCA. I pulled a couple examples from their website. Here is going to a Girl Scout meeting, going to the prom, and my birthday party. So if you have a birthday, your child has a birthday coming up and you're nervous, how is my child going to get through this birthday party? You're going to create your plan. You're going to look at this visual. This visual actually are all the steps that are needed to do a birthday plan. This is actually page 2. Page 1 has some other things that happened before this. And you're going to look at each one of these steps. Your child will read this. You'll read this with your child. You'll help him or her understand the steps. And what I like about this is you can look at each one of these skills and think, oh, my child knows how to do that, or my child does not. So for example, I will tell each child, thank you. Well, maybe that's a skill that your child doesn't have yet. Oh, I can teach that. We can practice that. So this is nice because it's a social story, it's a visual support, but it's also the task broken down into very small steps, and that will help you know what you need to do in your plan. Here's STAR that I mentioned earlier. STAR right now has lots of free supports, and I love this. This normally is they have a free website, but they also have a media center that costs. And for me, working for the schools, it's well worth its cost. But there are so many resources available now free to you all that I think are absolutely fantastic. So the one on the left is a visual that you can use to trade information. I talked about trading information is an important skill. That's why we have conversations, to find out what we both like, we learn more about each other so we can spend time together. I didn't know this until I started learning about social skills, but when we ask a question, we typically then answer it. So how are you today? Oh, I'm fine. This visual, I'm going to point like we're all together. This visual on the left has that built in. The question, and then it has supports there to help your child answer that question without being asked. I love this. I love it. I think it's exactly what is needed if you're working on how to teach your child how to trade information or have conversations. The visual on the right is a visual on how to play a game. So you're going to wait your turn. You're going to play the game. You have to stay seated, and then there's cleanup. So if your child is just now learning to play, looks like they always have Candyland as the example on all of these, but let's say your child is just now learning to play Candyland, and you know that your child's able to wait his turn. He can play the game, but he often gets up and runs around the table during game time. If you have this visual, which you can get on the website and print it out, when it comes to him starting to get up like he's going to run around the table, you can just nicely point, oh, remember, stay seated. Stay seated. So you're teaching him the steps or the rules, the expectations of what it means to play a game. Along those same lines, I just wanted to show you, this is related, but not just about social skills. I took a screenshot of these because I wanted you to see what other resources STAR has free right now. They have training videos, and I've watched them because, you know, sometimes training videos are really dry or maybe not all that relevant. These are really good. They're about 10 to 15 minutes in length, and they have really good information. And these are things that you can access free and watch. And then over on the left, I put some icons of free supports they have that are related to visual or related to social skills. Building social skills, family and fun time, some activities. If you were to click on the activities, you would see some how-tos on how to play with Play-Doh, how to do Mr. Potato Head, really nice supports that you might need at home, helping around the house and making phone calls. Those all have really good visual supports with them. Peers. Peers is a website I mentioned earlier. Peers talks about the very specific skills needed when you interact with others. There are, I counted them, I think around 52 video models on very specific conversational skills, social skills. I took a screenshot on the right. This is a video model and it says, help and show concern if someone is injured. So there's a video here of a girl, two girls playing. One hits her head, as you can see. She's like, ouch. There's a video of what not to do. And then there's a video of the correct way to respond. So if you have a high school student, a middle school student, and they're struggling with a specific social skill, this resource is fantastic. You can pull out a very specific skill and show them. All right, so you've done some teaching, now it's time to practice. And I know everybody I have 3 teenage children. Whenever I say, let's practice this, or let's do a role play, they kind of roll their eyes. But role plays are really helpful, and you can give feedback. Oh, I really liked how you made eye contact, but your voice was too loud. Or I really like how you waved. So that feedback is really important. And be sure, I mean, you guys are all very positive, and I've seen so many wonderful parents doing so many wonderful things. Make sure you praise them. Social skills are hard, so give lots of praise and encouragement. And I just listed some other resources if you want to have your child watch somebody else being social before they take the practice or the dive themselves. Okay, so you've done all this planning, you've done some teaching, and now practice. It's time to go. Go do your social thing. So go to the setting, remind your child of the plan. If you need to, bring the visual with you. Okay, bring lots of rewards and reinforcers. They don't have to be goldfish or M&Ms, but things that your child likes that you can say, oh, you did such a good job, and verbal praise obviously is part of that. Make sure you bring your supports. So if it's your headphones, if it's an ice pack for a child who overheats, whatever it could possibly be, make sure you bring those. Facilitate interactions and end the interaction on a success. So facilitating interactions, you all do that naturally, but it's things like, oh, John, I'm so excited to see you. Oh, look, Matt's excited to see you too. Look at the big smile on his face. Oh yeah, now we're all waving. So it's the way you narrate the situation to help bridge any lack of social interaction that might be there. All right, so I only have a couple minutes left, but I want to highlight just a few things. So if you're hanging out with acquaintances, which we do a lot of social interacting with people we don't know very well. When you do that, you're going to think about it the same way. So if you're going to the doctor, what social skills does your child need to have? If you're going to church, what does your child need to be able to do? If you're going to the pool or walking on a trail, what does your child need to be able to do? So think about those things very deliberately. Model good social skills. Here's an example. If you're walking in the neighborhood and there's a neighbor that you don't know so well. Oh, hey, Mr. Smith. Oh, Matt and I were just out walking. And then you could say something like, oh, Matt, remember his dog Skippy likes to be petted on his head. So you are filling in some of the gaps and helping your child know what is expected, but you're also telling the person you're interacting with kind of what's going on your end. And I always do lots of positive PR. So an example of that might be, for two children who don't know each other, they're acquaintances at that point. Maybe they're playing on the playground. If your child doesn't have hasn't been interacting with that child very much, but he's got a huge smile on his face, I might say something like, "Oh my gosh, Matt is so happy to see you. Look at that big smile on his face." And then I could prompt my child to wave and and the other child to notice the big smile. So that's when I say do some positive PR. Make sure you're helping those that we're interacting with understand what's going on and kind of facilitating everybody's understanding of the social situation. So if you're hanging out with family and friends, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to think about, what do I need to do? What do I need to teach? How can we practice it? And then we're going to do it. And there's lots of ways to get social. Game night. Incorporate some special interests. So if you have a child who loves to cook, I mean, I listed these examples because these are children that are in my life, but children who love to cook, children who love to do gaming competitions, Legos. So I set up very specific activities that are centered around some interests with those, because the motivation's there, the skill is there, the interest is there, and it makes for a really fun activity. So today, we're limiting our social interaction. So can you still socially interact? Yes. And my request is that you be very deliberate about it, because we're not interacting just generally. You know, I go to the grocery store and it's very quiet. I go to my doctor's office and I have a mask on. So when I think about how our children need to interact, I need to be more deliberate about it. And some ways I can do that is I can take a lot of my social interactions, take them outside. If there are a list of rules that your child needs to follow in order to do that social activity, you can do it a couple ways. You can turn it into a list of rules, or you can make it into a game. Hey, I'm going to put tape around us, or we're going to all sit on our beach towel. And the game is to stay on your beach towel while you eat your picnic lunch. So you make it kind of a fun thing. And then use some technology. And over on the left, Affirm is one of those resources I mentioned, and I just took a screenshot. They've got a really wonderful visual on how to call with FaceTime. So FaceTime has been really, really helpful. And then there are some other examples of ways your children can video chat through technology and see each other that way. All right, and so there are some references. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I know that if we've got any questions or answers, and I'll turn it over to the moderator and our panel of people. But before I give up the spotlight, I just want to say thank you, and I hope you're staying social in the summer, and I hope you, if you need any extra support, please reach out. You know, we're all here for you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kathy. That was remarkable. I so appreciate that. And that will be posted. And there was a question about the slides. We are still mulling over about the release of the slides, but these videos, all of them that we're doing this summer, will be posted on our website at some point. So, any questions for Kathy? None so far.
Okay.
With that said, if you have questions, don't hesitate to email any of us through the Indiana Resource Center for Autism. And
I see one pop up. Oh, never mind. It wasn't a question. Sorry, Kathy. It was just a comment.
no,
Thank you for the comment.
it was a great presentation. So thank you so much, Kathy. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Have a good summer, everyone.